If you've ever stood in a grocery store line counting coins in your palm, praying they'd be enough, you'll understand this story. Stay with me. What happened next changed everything. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like anxious wasps. I stood third in line at Murphy's Grocery, the same store where my late husband used to buy me roses on Fridays. That tradition felt like someone else's life now. I was 34 years old, 7 months pregnant, and holding $17 in crumpled bills. The basket at my feet contained the basics: bread, peanut butter, milk, and prenatal vitamins I could barely afford. My hands trembled as I recounted the money, knowing it might not cover everything. The woman behind me shifted her cart impatiently. I could feel her eyes on my swollen belly, not the warm, congratulatory gaze pregnant women usually receive. This was different. Judgment wrapped in curiosity. "Excuse me, ma'am." The cashier's voice broke through my fog. "You're next." I stepped forward, unloading items slowly. My back ached. My feet had swollen beyond recognition. Sleep had become a distant memory, replaced by anxiety that wrapped around my ribs and squeezed. That's when the commotion started near the produce section. Store employees rushed past, adjusting their name tags and smoothing their aprons. Mr. Chen, the manager, practically jogged toward the entrance. I'd never seen him move that fast. "He's here for the food bank donation photo," someone whispered behind me. Through the glass doors I saw him, Jonathan Hendricks, the billionaire philanthropist whose face decorated hospital wings and scholarship announcements across 3 counties. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a smile that cameras loved. The store transformed instantly. Suddenly everyone stood straighter, spoke softer, pretended their ordinary Tuesday had turned significant. I tried to focus on my transaction, but the cashier kept glancing toward the entrance. She scanned my items mechanically. Beep, beep, beep. $22.47, she announced. My stomach dropped. I'd miscalculated. Again. Could you remove the vitamins?" My voice came out smaller than intended. The cashier sighed, rescanning the bottle. Behind me, someone cleared their throat impatiently. That's when Mr. Hendricks' entourage swept down my aisle. Cameras, assistants, Mr. Chen gesturing broadly, explaining the store's community partnership programs, and then Jonathan Hendricks looked directly at me. His eyes traveled from my face to my belly, a belly that had grown impossibly large, stretching my thrift store maternity shirt to its absolute limit. Medical terms like Fundelheit and high-risk multiples echoed in my memory. He stopped mid-conversation. His expression shifted from polite interest to genuine surprise, then nervous confusion. 4 babies! The words escaped his mouth before his public relations training could stop them. That's impossible. The store froze. Every conversation stopped. Every shopper turned. The cashier's hand hovered over the register. Even the muzak seemed to pause. Heat flooded my face. Not the gentle warmth of embarrassment, the scorching burn of public humiliation. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean..." "Mr." Hendricks started, but his handler was already guiding him away, whispering urgently about optics and sensitivity. The cashier found her voice first. $19.32 is your new total." I handed over my $17. She waited. Everyone waited. "I need to put something else back," I whispered. An older woman 2 registers over shook her head, her disapproval visible even from a distance. A teenage employee pretended not to notice. Mr. Chen had already disappeared with the billionaire toward the back offices. I reached for the milk, the one thing I'd bought for myself, doctors. "Orders," when a quiet voice spoke beside me. "Keep it, please." I turned to find an elderly woman, barely 5 feet tall, pressing $3 into the cashier's hand. She didn't look at me, didn't wait for thanks. Simply returned to her own cart and continued shopping as if she'd done nothing at all. The cashier bagged my groceries. I carried them toward the exit on legs that barely functioned, past the promotional posters featuring Jonathan Hendricks' charitable smile, past the customers who'd already resumed their shopping and gossip. Outside, the October air hit my face like cold. Clarity. I loaded the bags into my 15-year-old sedan, a car that needed brake work I couldn't afford, and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. 4 babies. Impossible. He was right about one thing. It did seem impossible. Quadruplets. Against astronomical odds. A pregnancy my own family had called reckless and irresponsible, as if I'd chosen this path deliberately. What he didn't know, but what none of them knew, was that impossible had become my daily reality, and the hardest days hadn't even arrived yet. Next time, I'll tell you about the night the heat went out, and the phone call that never came. Subscribe to hear what happened when impossible became survival. You won't want to miss this. The phone call I'd been waiting for never came. Every evening that November, I'd check my cell phone twice, once when I woke, once before bed. My sister Emma had promised to call soon after our last conversation ended, with her saying she needed space to process everything. That was 6 weeks ago. Processing, I learned, was just another word for disappearing. My apartment sat on the 3rd floor of a converted house on Maple Street. 40 years ago, it had been someone's family home. Now it was divided into 4 cramped units with thin walls and outdated heating systems that landlords promised to fix next month. The temperature dropped to 23 degrees the night the furnace quit entirely. I woke at 2 in the morning, breath visible in the darkness. My first thought wasn't panic, it was calculation. How much would repair cost? Could I negotiate with Mr. Patterson, my landlord? Would he claim it was somehow my responsibility? I layered every blanket I owned and waited for morning. When I called at 8, Mr. Patterson sounded annoyed. "It's supposed to warm up by Thursday, can you wait? I'm 7 months pregnant with complications." My voice stayed steady despite the cold seeping into my bones. The doctor said, "I'll send someone Friday morning, best I can do." Friday was 3 days away. That afternoon I went to work. Cleaned office buildings for Marshall Commercial Services, a contract job that paid $9 an hour and offered no benefits. My supervisor, Rita, was a grandmother of 5 who never asked questions and occasionally left me half her lunch. "You're moving slower," she observed, watching me empty. Trash cans on the 2nd floor. "I'm fine." "You're not fine." Rita set down her mop. "When's your next doctor appointment?" "Next week." "What did they say last time?" I hesitated. The truth felt too heavy to speak aloud in a fluorescent hallway that smelled like industrial cleaner and old carpet. "They said the babies are growing well, all 4. Rita's eyes widened. I'd never told her the full story. Most people didn't believe it when I did. 4 babies, Lord have mercy. She sat heavily on a desk chair. "You got help? Family nearby?" The question hung between us like something fragile. "My husband passed 14 months ago. Car accident." The words still tasted wrong. "My mother lives 2 hours away. She thinks I should..." She suggested adoption might be more practical. Practical. Rita repeated the word like it tasted bitter. "Nothing practical about grief, honey." I nodded, grateful she didn't ask more questions. That night, I returned to my frozen apartment with a space heater Rita had insisted I borrow. It was old, the cord slightly frayed, but it pushed enough warmth into my bedroom that I could sleep sitting propped against pillows, the only position that didn't make my back scream. I dreamed of my husband, David. In the dream, he was fixing the furnace himself, tools spread across the floor, his steady hands solving problems the way he always had. He turned to me, smiled, and said, "It's going to be fine. I promise." I woke to darkness and the truth. He couldn't promise anything anymore. The next morning, my phone rang. For one wild, hopeful moment, I thought it might be Emma. It was the hospital billing department. "Ms. Morrison, we need to discuss your outstanding balance before we can schedule your next ultrasound." "I have insurance," I said, though the words felt increasingly meaningless. "Your insurance covers 60%. Your portion is currently $743. $743. The number joined the others in my mental ledger. Rent, utilities, car insurance, groceries, debt from David's funeral I was still paying monthly. "Can I make payments?" "We require 50% down before scheduling." I closed my eyes. "I'll figure it out." After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table David and I had bought at a yard sale our first year of marriage, and opened my laptop. Facebook glowed with other people's lives, vacation photos, dinner outings, pregnancy announcements, surrounded by smiling families. I typed a message to my mother, deleted it, typed another. Mum, I really need help. The heat is out, and I have medical bills I can't cover. Could you possibly loan me? I deleted that too. Pride wasn't the problem, exhaustion was. I'd asked before. The answer was always complicated, wrapped in concerns and conditions and suggestions that maybe I wasn't thinking clearly about what raising 4 babies alone would actually require. Outside my window, Maple. Street looked peaceful under early winter snow. Families walked together. Porch lights glowed warm. Somewhere in those houses, people had functioning heat and family members who answered phone calls. I placed both hands on my enormous belly, feeling 4 distinct areas of movement. 4 separate heartbeats I'd seen on ultrasound screens. 4 lives depending on someone who couldn't even afford prenatal vitamins without calculations. The space heater hummed its mechanical lullaby. Rita's kindness echoed louder than my sister's silence. And somewhere across town, in a house I'd never see, Jonathan Hendricks probably didn't remember the words he'd spoken in a grocery store checkout line, but I remembered. 4 babies. Impossible. What happened next tested everything I thought I knew about strength. Subscribe to follow this journey, because the hardest part wasn't the cold. It was what came after. December arrived with relentless cold and a stack of envelopes I couldn't open all at once. The furnace had been fixed, but the repair cost meant choosing between car insurance and groceries. I chose groceries. The car insurance lapsed. I prayed nothing would happen for 30 days, until I could scrape together enough to reinstate it. Prayer had become my most frequent activity, though I'd stopped attending church. St. Mark's Community Church had been my spiritual home for 6 years. David and I were married there. After he died, the congregation surrounded me with casseroles, cards, and promises of ongoing support. But somewhere between "we're here for you" and the ultrasound revealing quadruplets, the support quietly evaporated. Pastor Williams called it compassion fatigue. I called it abandonment. People don't know how to help, he'd explained gently. During our last conversation, your situation is complicated. It scares them. Complicated. That word again, used like a diagnosis. What scared them, I think, was the impossibility of it. 4 babies born to a widow with no family support, no financial stability, no clear path forward. It was easier to pray from a distance than to sit in the mess with me. So I stopped going. My days developed a rhythm dictated by exhaustion. Wake at 6, move slowly through a shower that left me breathless, force down breakfast my stomach didn't want. Work had become impossible. Rita covered for me. Twice before Marshall Commercial Services regretfully had to let me go due to attendance concerns. The unemployment check barely covered rent. I applied for assistance programs, WIC, Medicaid, emergency food support. Each application required documentation, appointments, verification, waiting. The system was designed for people with time and transportation and the energy to navigate bureaucracy. I had none of those things. My body was failing in small, measurable ways. Blood pressure climbed. Swelling reached my thighs. The obstetrician, a kind woman named Dr. Patel, used words like preeclampsia risk and mandatory bed rest, and we're monitoring closely. Do you have someone at home to help? She asked during my 30-week appointment. Yes, I lied. Dr. Patel looked at me with eyes that suggested she knew better, but couldn't force the truth. If anything feels wrong, bleeding, severe headaches, vision changes, you call 911 immediately. Don't wait. Don't try to drive yourself, understand? I nodded, wondering who exactly would call 911 if I couldn't reach the phone. That night I made another attempt to reach my family. I called Emma first. Voicemail. I left a voicemail message that tried to sound casual despite desperation bleeding through every word. Hey, it's me. Just checking in. I know you're busy, but I'm at 30 weeks now. and the doctors are worried about early delivery. I could really use—" My voice cracked. I steadied it. "Just call me back when you can, please." She didn't call back. I tried my brother, Marcus. He answered, which surprised me. "Hey." His voice was cautious, like I might explode. "Hi, I know it's been a while." "Yeah, it has." The silence stretched uncomfortably. "I need help, Marcus, medical help. Financial help. Any help. I want to help." He said it like someone reciting lines. But Sarah and I are barely keeping our heads above water. The kids' school expenses, my work situation. It's not a good time. It's never a good time, I thought. Somehow, it was never the right time to help your sister survive. "I'm not asking for much, just—" "Mom said you're still planning to keep all 4 babies." The shift in his tone was unmistakable. Judgment wrapped in concern. "They're my children. They're a financial impossibility. You can't even afford 1 baby, and you're talking about 4. That's not strength, that's stubbornness." The words landed like physical blows. "David would have—" "David's dead." Marcus didn't raise his voice, which somehow made it worse. "And you're about to bring 4 babies into a situation with no father, no money, no support system. That's not fair to them. So I should just give up? I'm saying you should be realistic. There are families who could give them everything you can't." I hung up before he could say more. The apartment felt impossibly quiet. Outside, Christmas lights blinked on neighboring houses. Somewhere, families were decorating. Trees, wrapping presents, planning celebrations. I sat on my couch, the sagging second-hand couch that David had promised we'd replace someday, and felt all 4 babies moving. Rolls and kicks, and the strange, intimate sensation of carrying an entire universe inside my body. Realistic, Marcus had said. But here's what was realistic. I was 34 years old, widowed, broke, physically compromised, and more alone than I'd ever imagined possible. My family had decided I was making bad choices, and therefore didn't deserve their help. And yet, these 4 lives continued growing, oblivious to bank accounts and family politics and societal judgments about acceptable ways to suffer. I pressed my hand to my belly, feeling a tiny foot push back against my palm. "I'm still here," I whispered. "I'm still trying." It wasn't much, but it was all I had left to offer. The hardest decisions were still ahead. Subscribe to find out what happened when trying wasn't enough anymore. This story goes places you won't expect. January came quietly, bringing with it a cold that settled into my bones and refused to leave. I was 32 weeks pregnant. Dr. Patel had ordered complete bed rest, which would have been easier to follow if I had someone to bring me food, pay my rent, or handle the daily tasks that keep a life functioning. Instead, I negotiated with necessity. Bed rest meant staying horizontal as much as possible. So I lay on my couch, with my laptop balanced on a pillow, applying for every remote job I could find: customer service, data entry, transcription. Most required experience I didn't have, or availability I couldn't promise. One company responded, a medical billing position, part-time, entirely remote. The pay was barely above minimum wage, but it included training and flexible hours. "When can you start?" the hiring manager asked during our phone interview. I looked down at my swollen body, felt the relentless pressure in my pelvis, and lied. "Immediately." "Perfect. Training begins Monday." Monday, I completed 4 hours of video training while lying on my side, pausing twice to use the bathroom, a journey that now required strategic planning. Tuesday, I took the certification quiz. Wednesday, I processed my first batch of insurance claims. The work was mind-numbing but possible, and it offered something I desperately needed: proof that I was still capable. That Friday, an envelope arrived that wasn't a bill. Inside was a handwritten card with a grocery store gift certificate for $50. No return address. The card read simply, "Saw you that day. Praying for you." I stared at it for 5 full minutes, trying to identify the handwriting. The Phi. Elderly woman who'd paid for my milk? Someone from church? A stranger moved by gossip? It didn't matter. $50 meant fresh vegetables, protein, milk I didn't have to ration. It meant 1 week of not choosing between nutrition and rent. I cried, holding that card. The first tears I'd allowed myself in weeks. The next act of mercy came from an unexpected source. Rita, my former supervisor, appeared at my door on a Saturday afternoon carrying 2 canvas grocery bags. "Don't argue," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. "I made extra, freezes beautifully. Just heat and eat." The bags contained labeled containers: chicken soup, beef stew, pasta with sauce, rice and beans. Enough meals for 2 weeks. "Rita, I can't." "You can and you will." She began loading my freezer with military efficiency. "You helped me plenty when my daughter was going through her divorce. This is what people do, we help." I wanted to tell her that my experience suggested otherwise, that most people offered prayers instead of presents. But Rita wasn't most people. "How are you feeling?" she asked, finally looking at me directly. "Huge, scared, tired." "That's honest," she smiled. "What do the doctors say?" "They're watching for early labor. Apparently 4 babies don't usually wait until full term." "Apparently?" Rita raised an eyebrow. "You're carrying quadruplets and you're still working?" "Part-time. Medical billing. It's from home." "Lord, give me strength." Rita sat down heavily at my kitchen table. "You got everything ready? Cribs, clothes, car seats?" The list of things I didn't have could fill a notebook. The list of things I'd prepared could fit on a sticky note. "I have some basics," I said carefully. "I'm working on the rest." Rita studied me with eyes that had seen enough life to recognize avoidance. "You applied for the assistance programs?" "I'm on waiting lists. Apparently emergency is a relative term." "What about your family?" The question sat between us like something alive. "They think I should pursue adoption." "Do you?" It was the first time anyone had asked what I actually wanted instead of what I should do. "No," I said. "I want my children, even if that makes me selfish or unrealistic or whatever other word people are using." Rita nodded slowly. "Then that's what we'll work toward." "We? You think I'm letting you do this alone?" "I've got connections, girl. Church networks, community organizations. My daughter works for social services. We're going to build you a support system whether you like it or not." Something inside my chest loosened, some tight knot of isolation that had been strangling me for months. "Why?" The word came out, smaller than intended. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you showed up to work every night, even when you could barely stand. I know you never complained, never made excuses, never asked for special treatment. That tells me everything about your character." She stood, gathering her bags. "Character matters more than circumstances." After Rita left, I sat with those words. Character matters more than circumstances. My circumstances were objectively terrible: widowed, broke, medically complicated, socially isolated. But maybe, just maybe, I hadn't completely failed at the character part. That night I felt a new kind of movement. Not kicks, but pressure. Low, insistent, wrong. I called the after-hours line. The nurse asked questions in a calm voice that didn't quite hide her concern. "Any bleeding?" "No." "Pain or cramping?" "Pressure. Like something's pushing down." "I want you to go to labor and delivery. Don't drive yourself. Call 911 if you need to." "I'm okay to drive." "You're not okay to drive. You're 32 weeks pregnant with quadruplets. Call someone." I looked at my phone. Who exactly was I supposed to call? My sister who wouldn't answer? My brother who thought I was making bad choices? My mother who lived 2 hours away and would say this proved her point? I called Rita. She answered on the second ring, didn't hesitate, and arrived in 12 minutes. "Let's go," she said simply, helping me into her car. Small mercies, I thought, as we drove through dark streets toward the hospital. That's how survival happens, not through grand gestures or miracle interventions, but through one person showing up when it would be easier to stay home. The hospital visit changed everything. Subscribe to hear what the doctors found and the decision I had to make in that cold examination room. You need to hear this. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Dr. Patel examined me with gentle efficiency, while a nurse monitored 4 separate heartbeats on the ultrasound machine. The sounds overlapped, a symphony of rapid thumps that should have been reassuring but instead felt overwhelming. "You're showing early signs of labor," Dr. Patel said, her voice professionally calm. "Your cervix is beginning to thin. Not active labor yet, but your body is preparing." "What does that mean?" "It means we need to stop it if possible." 32. "Weeks is better than many quadruplet pregnancies make it, but every additional day inside gives them better chances." She ordered medications I couldn't pronounce. Steroid injections for the baby's lung development. Strict bed rest, real bed rest this time, not my compromised version. Twice weekly. Monitoring appointments. "Do you understand the situation?" Dr. Patel asked, meeting my eyes. "If labor progresses, we'll have no choice but to deliver. 4 premature infants will require NICU care, extended stays, specialized support." "How much does NICU care cost?" The question hung in the sterile air. Dr. Patel exchanged glances with the nurse. "Let's focus on keeping them inside as long as possible. The financial questions can wait." But they couldn't wait. That was the part nobody wanted to acknowledge. Medical miracles have price tags. Rita drove me home at midnight. Neither of us spoke much. What was there to say? Back in my apartment, I lay exactly as instructed. Left side, pillows supporting my belly, phone within reach. Rita had insisted on staying the night, sleeping in my recliner despite my protests. "You're not being stubborn about this," she'd said firmly. "Doctor?" Said, "No driving, no stress, no being alone. I'm here, deal with it." I dealt with it. At 3 in the morning, I woke to my phone ringing. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Desperation makes you reckless. "Ms. Morrison? This is Karen Chen from County Social Services. I'm calling about your assistance applications." At 3 in the morning, but I didn't question it. "Yes? I've reviewed your case. Given your medical situation and the multiple birth pregnancy, we can expedite your approval for emergency food assistance and Medicaid expansion. However, there are some concerns. My heart rate picked up. The fetal monitor Dr. Patel had sent home with me began beeping faster. "What concerns?" "Your housing situation. A 3rd-floor apartment with no elevator isn't suitable for 4 infants and a recovering mother. We'll need to see a plan for alternative housing before delivery." "Alternative housing? I can barely afford where I live now." "I understand. We can connect you with programs, but there are waiting lists. And we need to discuss post-delivery support. Do you have family who can assist?" The question I couldn't escape. "No." "Friends? Community support?" "Some." "Some isn't enough for quadruplets, Ms. Morrison." Her voice wasn't unkind, just brutally honest. "I'm required to involve Child Protective Services if there's not adequate support in place at discharge. This isn't punishment, it's safety protocol." Child Protective Services, the words landed like a physical blow. "You're saying they might take my babies?" "I'm saying we need a realistic plan. These children will have significant medical needs. You'll be recovering from major surgery. Without support systems, we can't clear discharge." After she hung up, I lay in the dark, listening to 4 heartbeats on the monitor and Rita's soft snoring from the recliner. Everything was falling apart in slow motion. I'd fought so hard, endured isolation, medical complications, financial devastation, and now the system designed to help was threatening to take away the only thing that mattered. The next morning, I called my mother. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Hello? Mom, it's me." Silence. Then, "It's 6 in the morning. I almost went into early labor last night. They stopped it, but barely. I'm on strict bed rest. And social services is saying I need to prove I have support in place or they'll involve CPS." More silence. "Mom, did you hear me?" "I heard you." She sighed heavily. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to say you'll help. I want you to say you'll be here when they're born. I want—" My voice broke. "I want my mother. I've told you. From the beginning, this was too much. You can still make different choices. There are agencies—" "No. Then I don't know what you expect from me. I'm 68 years old. I can't move in and care for 4 newborns. It's not realistic." That word again. Realistic. "So you'll just let them take my babies?" "Nobody's taking anything. You're being dramatic." A social worker literally said I need support systems or CPS gets involved. Then find support systems. Church, community programs, friends. The church disappeared. Community programs have waiting lists. Friends are few and busy with their own lives. My voice rose despite Dr. Patel's warnings about stress. I have Rita, one person, that's it. Then maybe, my mother said carefully, you need to consider what's actually best for these children instead of what your pride wants. I hung up. Rita appeared in my doorway having clearly heard everything. She didn't offer platitudes or false comfort. She simply said, "We'll figure it out." But lying there, feeling 4 lives moving inside me while the system determined whether I deserved to keep them, I wondered if figuring it out was even possible anymore. The breaking point wasn't one dramatic moment. It was 1,000 small cracks forming until the entire structure threatened to collapse. And I was standing right in the center, trying to hold everything together with nothing but willpower and stubbornness. Rita built me a village of strangers. Within 3 days of my mother's rejection, Rita activated a network I didn't know existed. Her daughter connected me with a housing advocate. Her church, not my former church, organized a meal train. A woman named Patricia from the community center showed up with 4 donated car seats still in boxes. These are from the Safe Families program, Patricia explained, setting them carefully in my living room. When you're ready, we'll show you how to install them properly. When you're ready, not if. The presumption of success felt foreign. The housing advocate, a tired-looking man named Jerome, reviewed my lease and made phone calls using words like reasonable accommodation and Americans with Disabilities Act pregnancy protections. Within a week, my landlord agreed to let me transfer to a ground-floor unit in a sister property. The rent was $40 more monthly, but Jerome found an emergency assistance fund to cover the difference for 6 months. After that, you'll need another plan, he said honestly, but this gets you through delivery and recovery. Small victories built on temporary solutions. It was something. Dr. Patel seemed cautiously optimistic at my 34-week appointment. You've made it further than most quadruplet pregnancies, she said, reviewing my chart. Every day now is a gift. How are you feeling? Enormous, immobile, terrified. That's completely normal. She smiled slightly. Have you toured the NICU? I hadn't. The thought of seeing where my babies would inevitably spend their first weeks felt like admitting defeat. I'd like you to. It helps to know what to expect. The team there is excellent. They'll take good care of your little ones. Your little ones. Dr. Patel always said it that way. Never the babies or the quadruplets, like they were already people, already mine. The NICU tour happened 2 days later. A nurse named Angela walked me through. Rita came along for support, explaining equipment, protocols, visiting hours. Quadruplets typically stay 3 to 6 weeks, Angela said. Depending on feeding abilities and weight gain, you'll be able to visit any time, do kangaroo care, pump breast milk if you choose. The room was full of tiny isolettes, each containing impossibly small humans attached to wires and tubes. Parents sat in rocking chairs, looking exhausted and grateful simultaneously. This is where they'll be. I said, not quite a question. For a little while, then you take them home. Angela's confidence was matter of fact. You'll be amazed how fast they grow. Walking out, slowly because walking at 34 weeks with quadruplets was more like strategic waddling, I felt something shift. Not quite. Hope. More like acceptance. My babies would be born too early. They would be small and vulnerable. They would require more care than I felt capable of providing. But they would also be mine, and I would learn. That evening, alone in my apartment, Rita had finally gone home to her own family. I started writing letters, 4 letters, 1 for each baby. I didn't know their genders yet. I'd asked Dr. Patel not to tell me, wanting something to discover naturally, so I addressed them simply, Baby A, Baby B, Baby C, Baby D. Their medical designations became temporary names. Dear Baby A, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if I'll survive delivery or if you'll all make it safely into the world, but I need you to know I tried. When everyone said it was impossible, I kept trying. Your father would have loved you impossibly. He would have figured out the finances, fixed whatever broke, Stayed up nights without complaining. I'm doing my best to be both of us, but I'm just one person. If something happens to me, know that you were wanted, desperately, against all logic and advice. If I survive and you're reading this years from now, know that every hard choice was made from love. I wrote similar letters to the others, each one a different confession of fear and hope. Baby B, you're the one who kicks my ribs at night. Strong already, that strength will serve you well. Baby C, you hide behind the others during ultrasounds. But quiet doesn't mean weak. Sometimes the observers see most clearly. Baby D, the smallest in measurements, but measurements don't define worth. I learned that the hard way. I sealed them in envelopes and put them in my nightstand drawer, evidence that I'd existed in this moment, terrified but still present. My phone rang at 11 that night. Emma's name appeared on the screen. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Hello? Hey. Her voice was small. Marcus told me what happened, about the social services thing. Did he also tell you what Mom said? Yeah. A pause. I'm sorry. I've been a terrible sister. The apology landed. Somewhere between too late and exactly when I needed it. I know I disappeared, Emma continued. When you told me about the quadruplets, I panicked. It seemed so impossible. I didn't know how to help, so I did nothing. Nothing would have been better than avoidance. I know, you're right. She took a breath. I can't move there, my job, the kids' school, it's complicated. But I can help financially. Not a lot, but something. And I can come for a week after they're born, help you get settled. It wasn't everything I needed, but it was more than I'd had yesterday. Thank you, I said, meaning it despite the months of silence. Are you scared? Emma asked. Constantly. That makes sense. I'd be terrified too. We talked for 20 more minutes. Small talk, avoiding the deeper hurts. But it was connection. And connection, I was learning, was survival. At 34 weeks, I had a ground-floor apartment arranged, 4 car seats, a meal train, letters written to children not yet born, and a sister who'd finally called back. It wasn't a solution, but it was a foundation. And sometimes that's all you can build before the storm arrives. The pain started at 4 in the morning on a Tuesday in February. Not labor pain. I'd researched enough to recognize contractions. This was different, sharp, high up in my abdomen, radiating to my shoulder, and my vision kept blurring at the edges. I reached for my phone, knocked over a water glass, tried to sit up. The room tilted. Rita, I managed to say into the phone when she answered. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Something's wrong. She didn't ask questions. I'm calling 911. Stay on the line with me. The ambulance arrived in 8 minutes. The paramedics moved with practiced efficiency, asking questions I struggled to answer. Blood pressure, 180/110. One of them swore quietly. Severe preeclampsia, he said to his partner. Let's move. The hospital became a blur of hallways and urgent voices. Dr. Patel appeared, her usual calm replaced with focused intensity. We need to deliver today, she said, not asking. Your liver enzymes are elevated. Blood pressure isn't responding to medication. If we wait, you'll seize or stroke. Today? But I'm only 35 weeks. Today? Emergency cesarean. We're prepping OR2 now. She gripped my hand. I know this isn't the plan, but we're out of time. They wheeled me through corridors lit too bright. Someone placed a consent form in front of me. Pages of risks and possibilities and outcomes I couldn't process. If something goes wrong, I said to Dr. Patel, my voice shaking, the babies come first. Nothing's going wrong. We're one of the best maternal fetal teams in the state. You're all coming through this. But she couldn't promise that. Nobody could. In the operating room, surrounded by people in surgical masks, I thought about the letters in my nightstand drawer. Evidence of a mother who'd tried. The anesthesiologist talked me through the spinal block. Cold sensation. Numbness spreading. A blue curtain blocking my view. You'll feel pressure but no pain, someone explained. Try to stay calm. Calm. As if calm were possible while 4 lives were being surgically removed from your body. I Felt tugging, pressure. Dr. Patel's voice saying, "First baby, it's a girl." A tiny cry, impossibly small but real. Second baby. Another girl. More crying, a flurry of activity I couldn't see. Third baby. Boy. The cry was weaker this time. Someone said something about respiratory support. Then, silence stretched too long. Fourth baby, Dr. Patel said finally. Her voice had changed. Boy, NICU team is with him now. I tried to ask questions, but the anesthesiologist was saying something about my blood pressure dropping. The room tilted again. Voices became urgent. She's hemorrhaging. Get the clamps. Blood pressure 70/40. The ceiling tiles blurred. I thought about David, about the letters, about 4 tiny humans I'd carried for 35 weeks, but hadn't yet held. Stay with us, someone commanded. Stay with us. I tried, but consciousness was slipping like sand through fingers. The last thing I remembered was Dr. Patel's voice, steady despite the chaos. We're not losing her. Prep the transfusion. Now. When I woke, the room was dim and quiet. A nurse I didn't recognize sat in the corner, reading a chart. What? My voice came out scratched. What? Happened? She looked up, immediately alert. You're awake, that's wonderful. Let me get Dr. Patel. My babies? They're in NICU. All 4 made it through delivery. All 4 made it. The words settled around me like a blanket. Dr. Patel arrived minutes later, looking exhausted in a way that suggested she'd been awake as long as I'd been unconscious. How do you feel? She asked. Confused, sore, scared. That's fair. You had a significant hemorrhage during surgery. We performed a blood transfusion and managed to control the bleeding. You're stable now, but we'll be monitoring closely. Can I see them, my babies? Soon. You need a few more hours of recovery, but they're doing as well as can be expected for 35 weekers. She pulled up a chair. I want to be honest with you about what happened. My chest tightened. The 4th baby, baby D, had some respiratory distress at birth. He's on a ventilator temporarily. The NICU team is excellent, and we're hopeful he'll progress well. But his first hours were touch and go. Touch and go. Medical speak for almost lost. And the others? 2 girls are on CPAP support but breathing well. The other boy is on oxygen. They're all small, ranging from 3 pounds 8 ounces to 4 pounds 2 ounces. But they're fighters. 4 fighters, born too early, struggling for every breath, but alive. When can I hold them? Tomorrow, if you're stable. We'll start with skin-to-skin contact. It's beneficial for both of you. After Dr. Patel left, I lay in the hospital bed feeling emptier than I'd ever felt. My body had been home to 4 humans for 8 months. Now they existed separately, in isolates I couldn't reach, fighting battles I couldn't help with. Rita appeared in the doorway holding coffee and what looked like my go bag from home. You scared me, she said simply, sitting in the visitor chair. I scared myself. They're beautiful. I saw them through the NICU window. Tiny, but beautiful. Did you see baby D, the one who's struggling? Rita nodded. He's got a whole team watching him. Wires and tubes and machines, but he's holding on. Holding on, that's all any of us could do. What happened in the NICU broke my heart and remade it. Subscribe, because this is where impossible became survival, 1 heartbeat at a time. They wheeled me into the NICU at 6 the next morning. I'd been awake most of the night imagining this moment. But nothing prepared me for the reality of seeing 4 isolates arranged in a row, each containing a child I'd grown but hadn't yet met. Angela, the nurse who'd given me the tour weeks earlier, greeted me with a gentle smile. Ready to meet your babies? Ready wasn't the word. Terrified, overwhelmed, desperate, those fit better. But I nodded. We'll start with baby A, Angela said, leading me to the first isolate. Your oldest daughter, 4 pounds even. She's doing well, off all respiratory support as of this morning. I looked through the clear plastic at a tiny human with dark hair and impossibly delicate features. She was wearing a diaper that looked 3 sizes too big and had monitor leads attached to her chest. Can I touch her? Absolutely. Wash your hands first, then you can reach through the port. I washed with antibacterial soap that smelled like hospitals and fear. Then carefully, trembling, I reached through the circular opening and placed one finger against her palm. She gripped it immediately. "That's a good reflex," Angela said. "Strong girl." I stood there for 5 minutes, letting this tiny stranger hold my finger, trying to comprehend that I'd made her, that she was real and separate and mine. "Baby B is next," Angela said gently. The second isolette held another daughter, slightly smaller at 3 pounds 12 ounces. She was on CPAP, a small mask covering her nose, helping her. "Breathe. She'll likely transition off this in a few days," Angela explained. "She's just needing a little support while her lungs mature." I touched her too, stroked her impossibly soft arm, whispered words I'd never said aloud. "I'm your mum. I'm here." Baby C, my first son, weighed 3 pounds, 8 ounces, and was on low-flow oxygen through a nasal cannula. He looked like David. Same nose, same serious expression even in sleep. "This one's a thinker," Angela said affectionately, "always watching everything." Then we reached the fourth isolette. Baby D was noticeably smaller, 3 pounds, 5 ounces. The ventilator tube taped to his tiny face looked obscene. More wires, more monitors. A different energy around his space. Nurses checked him more frequently, adjusted settings, spoke in lower voices. "He's having a harder time," Angela said honestly. "But he's stable. We're weaning the ventilator slowly. It's just going to take him longer." I placed my hand on the isolette, unable to reach him through the ports while so many medical interventions were in place. "Can he hear me?" "Absolutely. Talk to him. Babies know their mother's voice." "Hey, little one," I whispered, feeling ridiculous and desperate. "I'm sorry you're having a hard time, but you're strong. You come from strong people." A nurse approached Angela, spoke quietly. Angela nodded, then turned to me. "They're ready to try kangaroo care with baby A. Would you like to hold her?" "Hold her?" "Actually hold my daughter." They helped me into a rocking chair, adjusting my hospital gown. Angela lifted the tiny infant with practiced care, trailing wires and monitor leads, and placed her against my bare chest. She weighed nothing, less than a bag of flour, but she was warm and real and making small snuffling sounds against my skin. I cupped my hand around her back. My entire hand could cover her from neck to bottom, and felt her heartbeat against my chest. "This helps regulate their temperature and heart rate," Angela explained. "It's one of the best things you can do for them." I sat there holding my daughter, watching my other 3 children fight for stability in their plastic boxes, and felt something crack open inside me. This was real. They were real. 4 separate humans who would need names and love and everything I didn't know how to provide. But in that moment, I could give them this: presence, my heartbeat, my voice, my stubborn insistence on staying. Over the next 3 days, a rhythm developed. I'd shuffle from my recovery room to the NICU every 3 hours, hold whichever baby was stable enough, pump breast milk that nurses fed through tiny tubes, learn medical terminology I never wanted to know. Baby D remained on the ventilator. The doctors tried weaning twice. Both times his oxygen levels dropped dangerously. On day 4, a neonatologist named Dr. Morris sat with me. "We need to talk about realistic expectations," he said gently. I braced myself. "Your son has underdeveloped lungs, common in multiples born this early. He's fighting hard, but there's a possibility he'll need long-term respiratory support, maybe a tracheostomy, maybe months in the hospital. But he'll survive. We're doing everything possible, but I can't make promises. The next week is critical." I returned to baby D's isolette, placed my hand on the plastic, spoke to him like he could understand. "You don't give up. You hear me? You don't get to give up." As if willpower could inflate underdeveloped lungs, as if a mother's desperation could override biology. But what else did I have except hope and stubbornness? Rita visited that evening, bringing real food from outside the hospital. We sat in the NICU family lounge, eating Thai food that tasted like cardboard because anxiety had killed my appetite. "Emma called," Rita said. "She's coming this weekend." "Good. That's good." "And the billionaire, Hendricks. His foundation sent something to the hospital. Did you hear?" I hadn't. Apparently, he makes donations to families with high medical expenses. The hospital foundation contacted you. Check your email. I checked on my phone. An email from County Hospital. Foundation. You've been selected to receive assistance from the Hendricks Family Medical Fund. I couldn't read the amount. Couldn't process it. Just set down my phone and stared at the wall. How much? Rita asked. Enough to cover most of the NICU costs for one baby. Maybe two. It wasn't everything, but it was something. Another piece of an impossible puzzle falling into unexpected place. On day 9, baby D's heart stopped. It happened during a routine feeding tube adjustment. One moment his monitors showed normal patterns. The next, alarms screamed and nurses descended like a coordinated storm. I was holding baby B at the time. Angela lifted her from my arms mid-kangaroo care, returned her to the isolette, and positioned herself between me and the emergency. What's happening? I couldn't see through the crowd of medical staff. They're doing CPR. Please step into the family room. That's my son. I know, but you need to step back and let them work. Rita appeared. She'd been bringing me lunch and physically guided me into the small family lounge. We sat on the institutional couch while codes were called overhead, and my son's life balanced on the edge of impossible. 2 minutes felt like hours. Dr. Morris emerged, his face unreadable. We got him back. He's stable, but his lungs aren't improving the way we hoped. What does that mean? It means we need to have a conversation about quality of life and realistic outcomes. The words landed like stones. Quality of life. Code for suffering. He's 9 days old. I know, and he's fought incredibly hard. But sometimes, Dr. Morris sat down, his exhaustion visible. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is acknowledge when we're prolonging suffering instead of sustaining life. You're saying I should let him die? I'm saying you should understand all the options, including comfort care. Comfort care, another euphemism for giving up. I looked at Rita, whose face showed the same devastation I felt. Can I see him? They let me stand beside his isolette, baby D, still unnamed. Because I'd wanted to meet them all properly first, lay surrounded by machines that were both keeping him alive and evidence of how hard survival had become. I placed my hand through the port, touched his foot, the only part accessible through all the medical equipment. What would you want? I whispered to him, to David, to God if anyone was listening. I don't know what's right. No answer came. Just the mechanical rhythm of the ventilator and the steady beep of monitors. That night, I called my mother. She answered immediately. How are the babies? 3 are doing well, 1 isn't. I explained the situation in clinical terms because emotion would break me. My mother was quiet for a long moment. What are the doctors recommending? They're presenting options. 1 is comfort care. Oh, honey, her voice cracked. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do. How do you make that choice? You do what's best for him, not what's easiest or hardest for you. What's best for that baby? It was the most helpful thing she'd said in 9 months. Over the next 2 days, baby D stabilized slightly. Not improvement exactly, but a plateau. The doctors reduced sedation to assess his neurological function. He opened his eyes, dark like David's, and seemed to focus on faces. That's a good sign, Dr. Morris admitted cautiously. He's fighting. On day 12, they attempted extubation again. This time, incredibly, his oxygen saturation held. He transitioned to CPAP, then to low-flow oxygen. It's not a guarantee, Dr. Morris warned, but he's showing us he's not ready to quit. Baby D spent 4 more weeks in NICU. His sisters came home first. Baby A at 3 weeks, baby B at 4. My son, baby C, came home at 5 weeks. Baby D remained, slowly gaining weight, slowly. Strengthening lungs that had nearly given up. I named them during those weeks. Baby A became Grace for the unexpected help that had carried us. Baby B became Hope because I'd needed to believe. Baby C became David, after his father. And baby D, my fighter, became Samuel, because I'd asked God for him. And somehow, impossibly, been answered. The day Samuel came home 7 weeks after birth, the apartment was already chaos. 3 infants crying in overlapping shifts. Rita teaching me how to tandem feed. Emma visiting on weekends. A rotation of volunteers from Rita's church network bringing meals and holding babies so I could shower. It wasn't the life I'd imagined. It was harder, more exhausting, more expensive, more complicated. But it was ours. The final chapter is where this all comes together. Subscribe to hear what I told my grandchildren about that impossible year and what it taught me about family. Now, as I sit at this kitchen table with my grandchildren listening, I fold my hands and let the story settle. So all 4 babies survived? My oldest granddaughter asks, her eyes wide. All 4 survived, I confirm, looking around at the faces gathered here. Your mother Grace, your Aunt Hope, your Uncle David, and your Uncle Samuel. Samuel, now 43 years old, sits across from me, his teenage daughter beside him. The oxygen concentrator from his infancy is long gone. He runs marathons now. Lungs that nearly quit have carried him across finish lines in 6 states. I don't remember any of this, he says quietly. You were busy surviving, we all were. The years after that hospital discharge weren't a fairy tale. The Billionaire's donation helped, but didn't solve everything. Medical bills followed me for years. Samuel required physical therapy, early intervention services, specialist appointments that filled calendars and emptied bank accounts. I worked from home doing medical billing until the children started school. Then I worked 2 jobs, morning shift at a clinic, evening data entry, while Rita and her church network rotated childcare. My mother visited occasionally. Our relationship never fully healed, but it existed. She held her grandchildren awkwardly, loved them distantly, and remained convinced I'd made everything harder than necessary. She wasn't wrong. I had made it harder. Keeping 4 babies as a widowed single mother with no financial safety net was objectively the difficult choice, but difficult isn't the same as wrong. Emma stayed involved, not perfectly but consistently. Birthday cards, holiday visits, phone calls when she remembered. It was enough to matter. Marcus and I didn't speak for 7 years. When we finally reconciled, it was stilted and incomplete. Some fractures leave permanent marks. The children grew up knowing their story. I never hid the struggle. They saw the bills spread across the kitchen table. They understood that other families had more. They learned early that love doesn't require wealth, but poverty makes everything harder. Grace became a social worker, helping families navigate the systems that once overwhelmed me. Hope teaches elementary school in an underserved district. David works in hospital administration, improving patient financial assistance programs. Samuel runs a non-profit supporting parents of NICU babies. They took the hardship and transformed it into purpose. Did you ever see the Billionaire again? My grandson asks. The one from the grocery store. Once, I say. Years later at a community event. I thanked him for the donation. He barely remembered making it. His foundation supports dozens of families, but I told him it mattered, that it was the difference between drowning and surviving. He'd looked uncomfortable, like gratitude embarrassed him. Rich people, I learned, often prefer anonymous generosity. It's cleaner than confronting the faces behind the need. Are you angry? Samuel asked suddenly. About how hard it was, how alone you were. I consider this carefully. My grandchildren watch, waiting for wisdom I'm not sure I possess. I was angry for a long time, I say honestly. Angry at your grandfather for dying, angry at my family for disappearing, angry at a world that offers more judgment than help. But anger is exhausting, and eventually I realized something. What? Hope's daughter asks. Life doesn't always give us the family we deserve, but it gives us the chance to become the family someone else needs. The words echo in my small kitchen. The same kitchen where I once counted change and rationed meals, where I pumped breast milk at 2-hour intervals, where I cried into my hands while 4 infants slept fitfully in bassinets, arranged like a tiny ward. This kitchen has held more exhaustion than any space should, but it's also held more love than I knew possible. Rita passed away 5 years ago, I tell them, At her funeral, I learned I was one of 17 families she'd quietly supported over the decades. She never mentioned the others, just showed up, helped, and moved on to the next crisis. That's the real story, I realize now. Not the dramatic grocery store moment, or the billionaire's uncomfortable words, or even the terrifying NICU days. The real story is Rita bringing meals, Angela teaching me to hold impossibly small babies, the anonymous donor leaving $50, Jerome finding housing assistance, Patricia delivering car seats, the tired nurse who stayed late, the social worker who refused to rush paperwork. Survival isn't one miracle. It's 1,000 small mercies offered by people who choose presence over convenience. You were brave, my granddaughter says. I was desperate, I correct gently. Bravery is choosing courage. I simply didn't have the option to quit. Samuel reaches across the table and takes my hand. Thank you for not quitting. Outside, evening settles over the neighborhood. Somewhere, another mother is probably counting change. Another family is fractured by crisis. Another impossible situation is unfolding in real time. I can't fix those stories, but I can tell mine honestly. Not as inspiration or instruction, but as evidence that impossible and survival can coexist, that sometimes staying is the only victory available, and that's enough. My grandchildren help clear the table. Samuel's daughter asks if she can read the letters I wrote in the hospital, the ones I kept all these years. I tell her yes, when she's older. For now, we sit together in the kitchen that's witnessed everything. 4 babies who were supposed to be impossible grew up, had children of their own, built lives from the rubble of early trauma, and chose different paths than I could walk for them. I didn't become wealthy, never remarried, still live modestly, still carry medical debt and complicated family relationships and memories that ache. But I'm here, they're here. And that grocery store moment that felt like public humiliation became the opening line of a story worth finishing. 4 babies, impossible, the billionaire had said. He was wrong. Hard, yes. Exhausting, absolutely. But not impossible. Never impossible. Thank you for staying with this story. If it moved you, please subscribe and share, because somewhere someone needs to hear that survival is enough.